as I said, we're going to be looking at some illustrative watercolour creatures. They're going to be quite fun. We're going to be very sort of like light-hearted with them, and we've now got a vote for 5. So we will hopefully get all of them. We've got a vote for elephant and a vote for dolphin, and duck, flamingo, and otter. Otter is quite an interesting. It's going to be quite a tricky one, but we'll see. We're going to see. So we're going to start. We're going to start with sort of, again, we're going to be quite loose and wet, and then we're going to see what we can pull out of our kind of marks to see who we've got. I may do a pink elephant, or no, I've got a pink flamingo as well. I was thinking maybe a pink elephant, but no, I think we'll do a grey elephant just because I was going to say I might do a pink elephant because grey is quite a dull colour, but you know, I think we'll stick to grey because we've now got a flamingo who's come in to sort of stretch his wings. So what I'm going to do first of all is just give us a very, very, very simple seaside bit of sea up here so that we've got some, you know, we've got a bit of land, a little bit of blue sky going up there. So we're going to do our usual trick of not doing it up here, but we're going to do it down here and then flip our paper over just so we've got a bit of landscape to work on. We can just do the figures on top and then kind of paint the background in between, but I think we'll at least get we're going to at least put some sky in. So first of all, we're just going to get a brush of water just to decide, and we just want to put a strip of sky across we're going to do it across the bottom, but then we're going to turn it over. So about, you know, this is a 10 centimetre brush, or 3 inches or 2.5 inches roughly, but just put a nice stripe of water across, because there's nothing to say that we can't have fantastic backgrounds even in quite sort of sketchy images. And then we can just put some blue pigment across there, whatever blue you feel like doing for your sky. You can decide whether your creatures are in a suitably tropical beach or whether they're in a more recognisably British beach when the sky might be a bit greyer in quality. But I'm just going to mix up a nice sky blue, so just give me a second while I'm doing that. And we can then put, often when if I'm doing illustration for a book or something, at the moment what I tend to do is to create the backdrop completely on its own, and then do the characters individually and kind of put them together with Photoshop so that I can really focus on getting the backgrounds how I want without worrying about, you know, having creatures. So here comes my blue, just going to come in across that nice bit of wet paper, just to sort of start off with. I'm going to probably get a bit stronger. I want to ideally get a stronger stripe of blue towards what is the top of this water here. That's it, sort of along there if I can, because that's kind of going to be where our horizon is in the picture, and we'll hopefully get a bit of sea in as well, but at least let's get some sky in. So let's just take that down just so that we've got a nice bit of blue sky, so that we can orientate ourselves. And if you want to put some clouds in, you can always take some tissue and we can just suck up some of the blue just to create some cloud shapes like that sort of. And they're quite good doing it this way because you get really quite nicer abstract clouds, and I find it works quite well. So put a couple of little clouds in the sky like that, and it's just a scrunched up ball of tissue just to suck that water off the surface. So that's our kind of bit of sky at least up there. We'll get the characters in, and then we may fit some background in around them, but at least we've got that bit so all our characters can fit into this space here. So mine is not too wet, so I'm going to be able to turn it over without worrying too much about dribbling. If you have got a very wet surface, you might need to give it a little minute to dry, or you might need to get your hairdryer onto it to speed it up. But that's my so I've got sky. We've achieved a sky. So that's my quick instant summer sky. Probably actually I'm just going to take I'm going to slightly extend this cloud bank just because I've done my trick, my annoying thing of putting 2 dots, and now all I can see is a face. So I'm going to just slightly extend the cloud bank a little bit. There you go. There's a name for that, and it always escapes me what it is, but it's paraphernalia or something. But we always see faces in patterns. It's one of the things that's allowed us to become the apex predator that we are now, apparently. So if you spend your life seeing faces in paisley wallpaper, you are not alone. It's what all human beings do. Right, so down here we're going to have a sort of scene on the beach. I think Well, I'm debating whether to put a bit of C. I'm going to put a bit of C, and I think I am, because I don't want to have the animals floating completely in space. But I think we'll put some of the things. I want to have somebody in the water. So let's think about. I'm going to start with flamingo. I know he was sort of like last on our list of suggestions, but I want to get him in because he's going to be in the sea. So I'm going to start. I want to mix up a flamingo pink. Let's say I'm very much working kind of off the cuff, off the hoof. I've sort of like, I didn't know what we were going to have suggestions tonight, so this is very much me sort of responding straight away at the idea. What I want to do is create like a sort of watercolour bloom in the right colour, in the sort of roughly the right shape, and then we'll sort it out later. This is going to be my kind of approach. So I'm trying to mix up a pinkish, I don't know whether I've got a bit too nice, I've got some, I need to get my palette out. I've got some blue has got into my pink, and now it's all looking a bit muddy. So I'm sorry if we're just getting a weird blank space at the moment. I'm going to start off with a little bit of water on the surface. Oh, look, I've spilled paint all over, so I didn't even notice. So flamingo is going to start over here. So I'm just going to put a patch of water on the surface because I want to see if I can get it spread. If I can't get it spread enough, I'm probably going to use a squirty bottle to add some extra spray to him. But we'll see how we go. So let me grab a brush and some paint. So I'm mixing up a watery pink, a nice flamingo, obviously pink. It's going to be. You can mix it if you've only got like a really bright pink, then mix it with a little bit of water so it's not too strong. And then flamingo. The key with the flamingo is going to be that big curly neck. So let's do that sort of question mark almost. That's going to be his sort of neck coming there. It doesn't matter if it's quite pale at the moment. We're going to make it a bit stronger. And then we've got the body of the flamingo sort of coming through. It's sort of like an egg shape, I suppose. And usually they've got a little bit of a tail sort of coming up around there. So somewhere in here is a head like that. And then what I want to try and achieve is to get a run to happen to make his legs. So I'm still going to use pink, but I want to sort of build up like a little well of pink sort of around here, just so that I've got something to start with. There you go. And I'm hoping that that's going to start spreading down, and I'm trying to get a nice dribble to appear. If it's not going to appear, I might have to step in and add a bit more water and a bit more paint just to get that going. It's gone a bit off-piste, but I don't mind. This is my latest approach for painting, really, is to kind of make a mess and then see what I can sort out from the mess later. So I want that drip to come there. It's not going to come. Bit more water. There you go. Right, so that's going to eventually become a flamingo. So you might want to come in and then put a little bit of extra pink underneath the body, so we've got some sort of shading happening there. So that's somewhere it's going to start being a flamingo. I think it looks vaguely flamingo. So ideally, I suppose we could put another. You can try and get two dribbles, so you've got a second leg coming down. But the sort of really iconic thing they do is do that whole standing on one leg thing. And then where you've got the dribble coming down, if you grab a piece of tissue and then just take out the bottom part of it like that, so you've just got the leg there, because what we can do is we're going to put some, and what we do is imagine the water's coming here and disappearing up like in a curve here. So this is the flamingo's in the water. So that's how we're going to start with the flamingo. We've got the duck. I think the duck's going to come on the beach. We've got an otter, haven't we? We've got a dolphin. So dolphin really is going to have to come in the water. Dolphin, right. Who suggested dolphin? Oh my goodness. Right, okay, so we're going to do blue with a dolphin. A dolphin's going to be blue, so I'm just mixing up a little bit of my sort of sea blue colour. I want to put a tiny bit of a dark brown in it, so it's more of a grey blue colour, because they are kind of a more kind of grey colour. And the thing with dolphin is we're not really going to see an awful lot of the dolphin. We're going to just see his head, aren't we, really? So dolphin head, you're going to have like, I'm going to literally like a half moon shape like that, and then he's going to have his sort of nose coming out like that. I don't know, something like that. That's somewhere we're going to do with our kind of shape. Just that very sort of simple kind of shape. At the moment, it's going to look very, very strange. It's not going to look anything like a dolphin. But then I'm just going to put a little bit of extra water in underneath, because I just want to sort of soften that edge again so that that colour is sort of slightly blending. So that's going to look like an elephant until we get to the elephant, who's going to look very different. But that's sort of like where we are with our sort of dolphin. So we've got dolphin, we've got flamingo. Right, so we've got otter. Yes, otter. This one I've been thinking about. I have given this some thought, I promise. So I'm thinking about otter. So with otter, we're going to start with a brown. So we want a kind of mid-brown, like a sort of terracotta-y, not the darkest brown, but sort of like, say, a sort of terracotta maybe, or a kind of sienna. But I did actually go and get to see some otters recently, so I have got a sort of memory where I'm going to go with them. Right, I think I've anyway. So I'm just going to put, again, a bit of water onto my paper. I think I'm going to do the otter over this side, because otters are quite sort of tall and thin, actually, because they do a lot of standing up on their hind legs with their sort of little paws kind of tucked in. So there's something quite meerkatty about them, because they've got that sort of very long, I mean, they are kind of basically water weasels, aren't they? They've got that, they're just nicer than weasels because, we don't see them as much, but they are that sort of shape, really. So I'm going to go for a round brush here, and brown brush, there we go. And I want to do, you've got to imagine this otter is kind of facing us. So a round shape to begin with, very, very sort of simple round, like that. I swear it's going to be otter. And then they've got little ears somewhere up here. And then I want to create a long body. So that's a long stripe of paint coming down. And we can fatten it out a little bit. And what's nice about when you're doing furry creatures, if you can get that sort of spready furry edge of the watercolour, then it starts to look like it's sort of fluffy, like it's got that sort of fluffy quality. So somewhere around there, that's going to become an otter. We're going to have some features in there and eventually. And then they usually have, if they're sitting up on their hind legs, and make them a little bit chunkier, they're going to have the tail, which comes out sort of somewhere like that. And I know at the moment he looks very cat-like, so hopefully we can make him look less cat-like and more like an otter when we've sort of done a bit more on him. But so this is just going to be our kind of very, very simple silhouette shapes of the animals. And then we're going to add some pen, and we're going to add some more paint to kind of get them all in. Then, of course, elephant. Now, obviously, elephant is quite big. So I'm going to mix up some grey. So what am I going to use? I've got some... I want to put some blue into the grey. I did once encounter some elephants in Sri Lanka in a reserve. And they are fantastic, and they're very naughty. And the trouble is, though, when you've got something that's quite naughty and it weighs, 4 tons, the naughty can get quite terrifying at moments. But they are lovely. I have one who tried to get me to give her some chocolate behind the keeper's back, and every time the guardian looked away, her trunk would come out, and she'd like nudge me and poke me and try and get me to get her what she wanted. She was quite delightful. Right, so I'm going to. With elephant, I'm going to imagine the elephant is sunbathing on the beach, okay? So, again, I'm going to just put some water onto the surface. The elephant's going to be sort of coming into the foreground sort of here. So I'm just putting water on there. I'm trying to imagine my elephant sunbathing on the beach now. So it's going to take some more liberties with the animal form than he would sort of get. So he's going to have his trunk straight up in the air, because it's going to be easy for us to see, with a slight curve on it, like that. And then we want to have elephant head kind of up here. And then we're going to have elephant tummy, kind of, because he's sitting up, he's sort of lying on his back in the beach. I think it will make sense when we all get there. Then obviously chunky, sort of big chunky legs kind of coming out the bottom. And what I'm going to do for the sort of like front paws, as it were, I just want to put a circle in here like that. It will make, I know at the moment it's like I put a wheel on him, but it will make sense because it will be kind of like the end of his elephant sort of upper leg, because we're making sort of like, I'm morphroprising him a little bit. And then again, a second kind of, that's going to be where his ear comes, sort of up around there. So that sort of gives us, I think it's, you can see the sort of elephant element sort of like coming up here. We do want a second leg, but I don't want to put it in quite yet because it can look a bit strange. And we can add in we'll add in more detail as we go. But that's I've got my elephant on the beach sunbathing. And then the last one is duck, isn't it? So we haven't got the duck in yet. So let's think what colour. Well, ducks are kind of brownish, aren't they? But they also have they do have some quite nice colours going on. So let's put so duck is going to be looking at elephant, looking right down at the elephant. I used to keep ducks, and again, they are fantastically characterful animals and quite bossy in my experience. And I remember sunbathing before, and they used to sort of like sneak up on you when you were sunbathing because they were so curious as to what you were doing. They couldn't leave you alone. Right, so I'm going to put, again, with the water, I'm just painting, like, again, another question mark sort of, it's almost like it's looking down at the elephant there, which might look a bit strange. But then I'm going to come in with a blue shape on that water. There we go. So that's going to become a duck. Trust me on this one. So there's the duck sort of head coming round there. And then I don't want him to crash too much into the otter, but I'm just going to bring him out. Have you ever seen those Indian runner ducks that have that very, very upright stance? That's kind of the duck that I'm going for, because he's then got that kind of, they almost look like umbrellas on legs with sort of webbed feet. I know neither the flamingo or duck have got beaks in yet, but we're going to start with that there. So that gets just that sort of shape in. I mean, you can do almost any shape in the world and stick the recognisable features on it, and it will look like the animal you're trying to get across. So you could have made all of these almost out of completely just geometric circles if you reduce them down to their sort of smallest parts, but this is where we're going with these at the moment. So I'll add some more colours into the duck, so we'll get some more some brightness going on in some of them. Right, so hopefully that's our cast of characters on the beach. They're just very, very sort of briefly mapped out. I think it'd be quite good to sort of get an indication of where the water's going. So I'm going to use my blue just to indicate sort of where we may get some more sea painted in, but I just want to sort of indicate where the water's coming. So it's going to come sort of through under here. I'm just painting it in very light blue so I can see roughly where it's going. So we've got sort of a blue kind of coming through here, and there's going to be blue round the dolphin there, and then it's going to sort of stretch away, and it's going to come across so that the beach is the sort of sea is the beach or the sea is curved round like that. So we've got that in. So then we can just put in some water along that horizon just to sort of get a hint of that scenery coming in through there. And then again, the same thing, we can put in some yellow for the sand in a minute as well. So I'm just going to put a little bit. I don't want to put too much because I want to put some reflections under the flamingo. So just leave a little patch underneath him so it's not too... you've got some white in there, so we can blend some pink in as well when we come back to sort of doing him. Just a little bit to come in there. Same with the dolphin. So I'm just going to come up and just make sure I've got some blue up on that horizon. Just sort of coming round. There we go. Okay. So let's just put those little bits of blue, and we can always come back and we can do more sort of detailing. We can put a lot more colour on. We can make it stronger. But at the moment, it's just so that we can establish where the all the parts of the picture are. And then so I'm going to come back now with some ochre, just to sort of put in where the sand is. So because you find that straight away, once you put in that sort of yellowy ochre expanse, it immediately just becomes, oh yeah, this is a beach scene. It's that combination of that yellow and blue that really immediately starts to sort of locate this as being on a beach. So we know that everyone's on a beach here. So again, I'm just going to put a little bit of ochre in like that. Now we can be detailed or as obscure or simplified as you want to be really with your shape. So what I'm going to do is kind of do a very basic level of detail on each one, and then I'm going to keep adding it to show you how you can increase with more and more with different sort of mediums and give them more personality and detail. You can always one of the most difficult things, in fact, is to do things really simply, because getting that very sort of pure, simplified version of reality is actually quite an art in itself. So being able to sort of sit back and stop, is quite tricky, because people always want to put too much in. So we'll keep going and sort of see where we're happy with them. Right. So again, I can put some more yellow in later, but I'm just going to leave that now as sort of being that there. Right. So luckily my stuff isn't too wet, so I don't think I'm going to need the hairdryer, having made everyone rush out to get it if they needed it. But right, so let's think about the flamingo. So we want to come in with some deeper colours and some drier pigment, so that we're not doing too much wet, so we can start to get a little bit of definition into the shapes. And I know at the moment he doesn't have a beak, but we will be remedying that too. So if we can think, even in cartoon or sort of abstract illustrated animals, you've got to imagine that the sunlight's coming from above, and so you're going to get shadow underneath the creature, underneath, just like we've looked at all the reality in all the real pictures we've done. This is going to be the same sort of thing. So look at the shape you've got on the paper, the sort of splodge, and go with that as being the shape of your bird, because it will work. And then, so I'm just going to put a bit of shadow in underneath his sort of the body, and then when I've got that in, I can blend that into the rest of the bird with a bit more, just by using a wet brush, just to pull those colours in together. So I'm just going to pick that shadow up all the way, and I've got a shape, and because I've sort of got a bit of a tail shape there, and it's got his tail there, so this can all become sort of like fluffy feathers, as if he's sort of, they all seem to be boys for some reason, but as if he or she is fluffing out their feathers in that sort of way. And then we've got to go down into the sort of leg area there. Underneath, this is just the head. We haven't got the beak in yet, because they have that very iconic sort of almost like an umbrella handle again, or a big hook of a beak, haven't they? But we don't want to put, I want to do that with a bit more control. So we've got that sort of shape in there. So that just gives us quite a nice, that quite subtle sort of watercolour, just gives that nice sort of feeling of shadow and sort of depth. So I'm going to come back now with a dark brown or a blackish colour, so a relatively dry pigment again, because this is I want to be quite controlled with this. I don't want it to run too much. So we're going to put a beak shape in here, which is kind of that, almost like a black banana. If you think of it as a black banana, but leave a little bit of white on it, that just leaves that sort of flamingo-y shape coming in there like that, and it's just got a very sort of, again, it just looks very flamingo-y, and we can put a tiny, just a simple dot for his eye to begin with, just that little tiny dot, and hopefully it's sort of about halfway through the sort of head area, like that, and that's starting to break that. I want to put a bit more shadow into his neck, because his neck needs a bit more definition, just sort of coming up under, and it's still nice and wet, so we're still getting a nice sort of bloom happening around his sort of head. I'm going to take a bit more and just get a bit more colour into that. I've left a little bit of whiteness around his eye, because they do often have a patch of white feathers around their eye, so don't feel you've got to paint pink all the way up. You just have that little bit of pinkness in there, and then I can blend some more sort of colours in. And where I've got like, I can see a nice sort of spreading bloom there, I can come in with my pink brush, and I'm going to add to the tips. Now sometimes they have quite an orangey hue to them, so if you want to put a little bit of orange into your pink as well. And then where I've got this sort of like bloom of watercolour, I'm going to imagine that I can just see the tips of some feathers, so a few little strokes like that, just sort of coming, not all on every single one, but just a few to give a little bit of sort of rustly movement, as if he's sort of fluffing his feathers. And one thing they do have is a very knobbly knee, so about halfway down his sort of leg is going to have that knobbly, quite iconic flamingo knee just sort of happening there. And then I'm just going to put a few little flicks of pink or orangey pink into the sea below, just to show where he's reflecting a bit on the water. So again, I'm going to stop there for now. We can come back later and maybe do a little bit more. Look, I'm going to stop there. And then she comes and paints a bit of pink around his bill. But I just wanted to pick that bit up a bit while it's there. So we can come back and we can add some more detailing later. But you know, I think that looks quite flamingo-y. What we might add is another foot in, because sometimes we want to make it look like he's standing on one leg. So we can just put like a foot doing like a line like this, look, bending through and then back. So it's almost like a treble clef, almost like a piece of punctuation, I think, like some sort of, but there he is with his foot just sort of coming up like that. So he looks like he's definitely standing on one leg with that second one tucked in behind. And if you've got like an edge here where you're not sure if that's the right shape, a few more flicks of pink, just even on the white background, just to kind of give that impression that he's sort of rustling his feathers. Right. So that's sort of like level 1 flamingo detail. Level 1 flamingo detail. So now I'm going to have a look at the dolphin. Let's get some bluey kind of paint again. So I think with the dolphin, I think I need to get, the moment his head's it's got too much of a neck happening. So I just need to bring that shape out a little bit, because it needs to sort of be a slightly smoother shape. Otherwise it's going to sort of not be dolphin-y enough. And again, let's just bring some shadow in like that. And at the moment it looks too hard, so I'm just going to come back with a wet brush and blend that a bit better into his sort of head. Like that. And then what we need to get in is that sort of, what I always think of as a kind of zippy beak. You know, it looks like he's got, his mouth is kind of zip, like a sort of zip, because they have that sort of like a quite sort of smiley face. So with a thin brush and a little bit of black, I'm going to come in, excuse me, elephant, and they always have that sort of smiley face like coming up, don't they, with that sort of like slight grin on the sort of their beak. It is called a beak. They have a blowhole about there on their head, and I'm just going to again stick to doing a little tiny black dot for an eye, because if I want to come back and make the eye more exaggerated later, then the black dot can still be the pupil. So there's my little eye for the dolphin like that, and we can just make that slightly more into a definite smile, I think, just by opening it down a little bit. Like that. So that's sort of like the dolphin sticking out of the water. Again, we want to get a few ripples of colour coming out around the edge, sort of there. And we can bring some more sort of water. I don't know quite how he's underwater there, because the sea would obviously be quite shallow there. But, you know, we can take it from us that it's sort of, it's underwater, and it's sort of, you know, there's, you know, just maybe a very deep bit there that we're not aware of. I'm sure that, you know, I should probably have done him a little bit further out, but we can put some blue sort of lines and stuff around him. We'll add some more blue in a bit. Right, so I know I'm doing them in order, but I'm going to go to the otter next, because at the moment he does look very much like a sort of, well, I don't know, like a sort of hot dog. Right, so thinking about the otter, because we're looking at him front on, you're going to have a nose area around about here, and then sort of eyes. So if I put a couple of little black dot eyes in, it might start to make a little bit more sense, because we're going to have two little sort of eyes here, and then they have quite a high up nose, sort of like, so you've got the three little eyes like that. Not three little eyes, three little features. Then I want to mix up a darkish brown, because I want to come into like inside his ears like that, just to sort of give him that little kind of cat-like ear kind of feel. And then I want to put some dark under his chin, because that helps to give the face a bit of definition, you see, just by doing that little sort of shade round there. I don't want it to stay too strong like that, because it'll look too much like he's wearing a bow tie. So I'm going to then come back and with the wet brush, just sort of pull that water around and through the shape, and just give a bit of sort of shade through there. And then if I just do a little, you see, like just a little stroke of paint either side, like coming down from the nose, almost like a sort of triangle, that starts to give that sort of the shadow of like, because he's front on, you has got a little muzzle, but you're not going to see all of it. So hopefully that's just starting to give that face a little bit more kind of character. And then here he needs to have paws, because they tend to do that thing like squirrels do, where they kind of sit up and say, you know, with their little paws up. So I'm going to give him little paws kind of coming round like that. And he's got a little arm shape sort of just coming off around there. I'm going to make that a little bit darker because that might have gone a little bit obscure to see. And let's just make a little bit of a darker brown and do that in again. So really what I'm doing is thinking of the shadow that comes round that. So that's like underneath his paw and then a little bit sort of round the top. So it's not really outlining, it's kind of like seeing where the shadow comes. And again, once you've done that, if you think it's gone too strong or too dark, you can come in and again just soften and let some water work on that, because it's okay if it's a bit spread. I've made his arm slightly bigger on this side. I've just taken it out a little bit further because I think it needed a bit more space on that side. And that's just starting to get... But we're really trying to see the shadow on him rather than doing like, you know, really drawing an outline. It's just sort of seeing the shadow and the shadow describing that little shape of his paws kind of coming down here. To do the front ones, you really are only going to see, his lower legs. You're really only going to see like the sort of like the front of his feet. So to keep it simple, I think I'm just going to do, to begin with, like two little half round sort of paws like that, you know, just like two little curves, and then again just sort of a little bit of shadow around them, and maybe a little bit coming over the top and sort of coming up the middle of his tummy like that, but not too much because we can always add more detail later. But it's best to sort of go slowly, and it's such a balance between putting too much information and not quite enough, you know, just to sort of, but if you just see a little pause, and you can just make a little hint, because they tend to have a bigger thigh muscle, so it sort of just make a little tiny bulge either side as being his sort of, and then thigh, and then we can put some shadow onto his tail so that becomes part of him definitely. My duck's slightly overlapping him, so I'm just going to shorten his tail and give it a little curl. And you can if you want to change that, if you darken it up a bit, you can distract from the bit of painting that wasn't perfect, and that just gives you that little sort of ottery. Hopefully does look a bit like an otter. My friend's granddad once convinced them they were going to buy a little otter as a pet, and he kept saying, you can come round and see the little otter. And when they went round to see it, when the day came, he opened the shed and there was a new heating boiler. He said, there you go, it makes the water a little otter. So that's granddad's for you. That's a terrible granddad joke. So I can come in, I'm going to put a little bit of extra shadow into this bit underneath here. Well, that's too dark, so let me quickly get in and with a white brush, there we go. And that's better. That was too dark and now it's fine. There we go, just to sort of bring those in like that. So we can come back and we can add some details and some features onto them there. So I seem to be doing it in order. Let's have a look at elephant. So with the elephant, I'm going to put some detail in the ear. So I'm just going to bring, again, imagine that I've got some shadow kind of coming around here, and that gives me the side of the ear just lying on flat as if it's spread out on the beach, you know, and I can just tidy up the edge a bit, just give it a bit more definition. Then with this circle that I did here, if I find the oval in it, and then I can give it sort of like the little toes they kind of have, just sort of three little quite subtle indications like that, and then that sort of coming back into the body of elephant like that there. He's definitely asleep, this elephant, so I'm going to just do a tiny little curved line to begin with, like that. I was debating whether to do sort of elephants with sunglasses and that sort of thing, but I think we'll keep the accessories to a minimum for the moment. And then now what I haven't got in here is the tusk, and it can be quite tricky to sort of work those out together. But if you imagine you've got your trunk coming down, so the trunk's going to come down with a little bit of shadow. So if you come down like that and then do a little tiny tusk, like sticking up at the bottom like that. And I know it's grey, but then if we then come down and make the rest of, like, do a little curved sort of line there just to give the end of the tusk like that, and then we can come in and put some extra shadow around it, the tusk will start to look a bit whiter in comparison. So and then we can come in, and that's enough to indicate where the tusk and his mouth is sort of hidden all underneath there, because the trunk is actually a sort of top lip and a nose combined. Funnily enough, it's not just a nose, it's actually a top lip as well. So it's the bottom lip is kind of in there too. And then again, a bit of shadow underneath like that. And again, I'm going to do the same sort of like detail. I think I just want to blend that shadow on his body in because it looks a little bit too stark there. So I was going to put a bit more in and then get some water on that just to blend it in. And I can go around the shape of the foot there. Look, that helps that to sort of stand out a bit. So let's get that in a bit darker. There we go. And then I can blend that through just with a wet brush, just so that those edges don't become too hard. And we can just soften them through like that. And I think as he's lying in the sun, maybe we can get a bit of pink going on that. I also want to get some shadow into his arm here. So just sort of where his shoulder comes. I've already painted a bit like where that ear bit is there. That's already faded up quite a lot. So I'm going to come back and just put that in a bit stronger. And then a little bit of shadow kind of through there and around there. And the side of the head there, just on the back of his head. Again, just thinking all the time about, you know, the shadow, where it's falling. Well, it's going to be falling right down on him, so all the shadow is going to be coming down below. And even though it's sort of like a cartoon elephant, things like shadow give it that little bit of reality, which help make it sort of work as an illustration. And then I can come under his leg like that. And some toes, just some little toes kind of coming there. And you can hint there's another leg behind just by doing a little sort of extra line of shadow kind of coming round there. And we're not going to question that he's, you know, not wearing trunks. Of course he's got a trunk, but he's not wearing trunks because I don't think we're going to get into dressing animals. I don't know, it's always that weird thing, isn't there, of like, you know, if you dress, like, you sort of see cartoons sometimes and they've got sort of like some animals in clothes and some animals in not clothes, and it's like, does that mean those animals are naked, or, you know, how's that working? So I think we're just going to assume that they're not going to be wearing clothes tonight. If you want to, you could totally add some beach shorts in, you know, maybe we'll do that with some pen afterwards, you know, but we'll start with a nude study. So I'm just adding a little bit of fine detail with the brush, but that's sort of, I think that's just taken him up. And now we've got this very ghostly duck, like a sort of phantom duck that's sort of lurking here, like a sort of question mark. I love the fact that the Latin name for duck, or the sort of collective Latin name, is Enid. So that's their kind of, like the way you get ursine, meaning bear-like. Ducks are Enid, which I think is such a weird and wonderful name. Right, so I'm going to, bit like Flamingo, I'm going to just get his head in first. And I'm imagining it's a drake, so I'm putting that very dark peacock blue kind of colour, and they usually have a collar, so this is why it's going to look very strange. This is like the sort of top half of the duck, and there's going to be a white collar here, and then this is going to be going brownish. So I'm going to imagine that what I'm doing is leaving that white, that's going to be the duck's eye there. So then I can paint all of this in blue. And I haven't drawn a beak on yet, which is why the duck doesn't have a beak. So don't worry, I haven't forgotten that the duck needs a beak. I've just been building up to it. So there's the blue sort of duck head, like that. So beak-wise, we want sort of, I want to use an ochre colour, but that might blend a bit too much into the beach. So I'm going to start with an ochre, but I'm going to darken it down with an umber into a more sort of brown colour. So it's just a bit more assertive. I don't want to disappear into the sand. So let's put his beak coming in. So he's obviously nudging the elephant to see if the elephant's awake or not, because he probably wants to go and build a sandcastle. So just like a long, and I just give it a little upturn at the end of the beak, and that usually gives it quite enough character. We can probably come back and put a bit more detail in, but I think the duck definitely wants to go and play. And then I'm going to use some of the brownie colours again. I'm going to leave a white stripe there because that's the sort of pale duck neck band that they sort of have, and then going to come down into the brown sort of feathers and a wing somewhere around there. And so you've got a sort of slice of the wing. We're going to make that sort of shadowy. So hopefully we're seeing this duck starting to materialise and having a bit more presence on the page. So underneath his wings, sort of round there, usually have a lovely chestnut. I'm doing a sort of mallardy sort of duck. Take his back in there. We can always add some more layers of colour, but we can just get him in so he's appearing. There we go, so he's starting to appear under here. And then we want the feet, because the feet are again something that we think of very much with ducks, and they're usually they're quite a vivid orange often. So I'm going to get some orange on the go, and little stumpy leg, and then feet. And you can make the feet as big as you want. If you kind of just think about doing like a triangle and then a stripe up the middle, and then sort of bring them together, and that kind of does a feet. And then you've got the second one sort of coming behind, and you're just going to see part of it disappearing behind like that. So we've got sort of little duck feet, and let's bring some orange into the beak as well to kind of match him round. So there he is, sort of poking the elephant on the forehead to see if he's going to come and build a sandcastle with him or something like that. So I'm just going to add a little bit more definition, because again that wing has sort of disappeared off again, just to come in, give that stronger colour kind of through there. The perspective is doing something slightly weird, because the duck looks like he's on a slightly different perspective plane to the elephant, but I expect the world can forgive me that just this once. There we go, and just sort of bring that down. And there they are, just sort of all sitting on the beach. So we've got them sort of characters coming through now, and the duck is obviously quite annoying, isn't he? He's trying to make the others come play with him. And I think, for some reason, I think the otter needs a kite. So I'm going to give him a kite, because it does look like he's holding his hands like he might be holding a kite. So in this sort of beach story, the otter is definitely flying a kite. So I was going to do a blue kite, but that's obviously the wrong colour to do, because you won't really see it against the sky. So let's go for a nice red kite. So up here in the sky, somewhere over here, classic kite shape. Just that sort of elongated diamond. Instead of painting the cross on, if you actually paint it in, if you want to do a kite, if you paint like a quarter, and then a long like triangle, a quarter, and you leave like a sort of cross in the middle like that, then when that's a bit dry, we can add a second colour into that pale cross that you've left, rather than trying to then put a darker colour on top like that. So then we've got the tail of the kite sort of whizzing across like that, and we can usually have we have a nice tail with some ribbons, so I'm going to mix up some orangey red, like just do a little sort of 2 little triangles or a little sort of blob either side, and that becomes the tail of the kite like that, quite sort of straightforward and simple. And I'm going to let that dry a little bit, and then I'm going to draw the kite string in. I'm going to hint there's a kite string in afterwards with a pen, because if I try and do it with paint, it's going to look way too thick and heavy. So I'm just going to indicate there's a kite string sort of going there. Let's give the duck, see, I'm starting to amorphipise all these creatures and giving them sort of bit personality. I feel the duck looks like he definitely wants to go and do something, so let's give him a bucket and spade. I think he's trying to make the elephant wake up and do sandcastles. So let's put a bucket. Now I'm going to put the bucket over the elephant's ear because it's just sitting in front of him slightly. It doesn't really matter. You can by the time you've painted it, it will sort of blend in, but you can find space to put your bucket like that, and we can just give it that sort of bucket shape like that. And I don't know how the duck's going to use his bucket and spade. He hasn't got hands, but maybe that's why he wants the elephant to kind of come and do it for him, you know, because he can't do it. So once you've got that in, we can come back with some paint and tidy that up, and then it's going to have a spade sticking out. So we've got the handle for the spade like that, and little half moon and a bar across, just give it that far edge there, and then that becomes sort of buckety. And so we're going to do some drawing on top of this, so we'll be able to pick up all the sort of details on this as well. Dolphin and flamingo. Let's give elephant a rug to be sleeping on, or beach towel. So I'm going to go again for blue towel. So to put this on after the elephant has been done, I'm just going to imagine it's coming behind the elephant, and then it doesn't have to be straight because can be like bumpy across the surface like that because it's sitting on a sandy surface. But that's quite nice, just coming in sort of in like that. So that gives me his kind of edge there. And then I'm going to make it stripy. So I'm going to start by defining the stripes just coming up to him. And if you slightly alter them so that as they come towards the middle and they're sort of front onto the viewer, they come straighter like that. Then as they come the other way, they lean slightly towards the left. It really helps with perspective. It's just a little sort of trick. So they're not actually all parallel. These ones lean slightly that way and these ones lean slightly that way. So I can come in and we can do every other one blue, and then we'll choose a second colour. I'm gonna do the blue ones first, and then I would say let it dry for 5-10 minutes so that then you can get the colour into the second stripe. You can leave it sort of whitish, or you can put a nice gaudy orange or something. But it also helps to define the edge of the elephant so you can see him better against the background. I think it's quite nice working like this because you can get your characters in, then you can build the stuff up around them. And when you decide what each one of them has, so there's his sort of I think you're allowed to have blankets in this world, I think if you're planning an illustration, if you were doing, something for a card or just something to be a sort of, maybe you wanted to do animals to represent all your friends or something in a scene like this, you have to decide. It's a bit like the whole animals and clothes thing. You have to decide how far you're going to bend reality. Are they going to need sunglasses? Are they going to be, having swimming costumes on? All that sort of thing. So it depends how much. And if you're going to put clothes on one of them, you've got to put clothes on all of them. As I said before, otherwise you have to ask why there's naked animals and not naked animals. So you've got the nice sort of stripy beach towel there for the elephant. If you wanted to, I think with him, we're not going to see any beach towel appearing over this side because he's too big. But you could continue it just a little bit showing on the other side if it was a smaller creature, just so you've got that sort of sense of perspective. Right, so I've got the two. What's flamingo? What could he be doing? Well, maybe he needs a hat. I think maybe the flamingo might need a sun hat, just to protect him from the sun rays. So if you decide you want to put something in like a hat later, it can kind of just balance. So we can give him the broad brim of a hat, just a sort of line balancing up on his head like that, and then a little bit of extra. Oh no, do you know what I've just done? I've put a hat, haven't I? That's clothing. Does that count as clothing? Does that mean we've now got to put clothing on all the animals because I put a hat on a flamingo? That is not a sentence I thought I was going to say tonight, I have to be honest. Do we need to put clothes on the animals? Now I put a hat on the flamingo. But there we go. We'll see how we go. We're going to darken that down a bit, but that just gives us that sort of simple kind of hat shape, And you might want to, it looks like one of those Australian hats. I'm always tempted to put corks on it, but I'm not going to. I don't think that might be taking it a bit far. But that's just given him a sort of hat like that. And, well, if we're going to start adding a few more accessories onto them, I feel that it's okay. Maybe we'll allow them to have hats and we'll stop at hats. But I was thinking, what about some scuba goggles on the dolphin? Because as we know, dolphins are mammals, so they are sort of land and sea together. So they still have to come up from air. I've never swum with dolphins. I have inadvertently swum with seals in the wild. I'm not a great swimmer, and I was swimming in the sea, and I thought I was telling my husband something. I turned around and it was a seal who'd sort of come up behind me, and we were both very surprised. So I'm just going to put that very simple half moon shape on round his eyes like that, just to be a kind of like sort of swinging goggles like that. With the strap, I think we're going to have to sort of extend it a little bit so that it's coming round the back of his head and round. I think if we're going to live in a universe where the dolphin has a snorkel, we can imagine that it's got a big enough elastic to go around his head, sort of round there, and we can add a few more details in just to give that a bit more of a kind of glassy finish, but we'll probably do that in some pen. So now the dolphin's got, and of course what he does need is a snorkel, isn't it, sort of coming up as if he's sort of going swimming. So we're just going to see the side of the snorkel coming round like that. I've done it in black, but I'm going to do a bit more blue on that. I'm going to make it a bit fatter, but that should hopefully look like a snorkel. And it's funny how you think how sort of recognisable some of these details are, even in a very simplified form. It's all to do with the setting and the shapes, but just that sort of having that snorkel shape immediately makes it obvious that it's a snorkel, though of course we know the dolphin doesn't need a snorkel, but in this world he's got one. And we can add a bit of blue onto his bits and pieces as well. There we go. So that's just got those in there. So that's given him a snorkel. And right, so that's got a few more of those sort of details in. Okay, so now I'm going to swap to pens. I'm going to add some pen detail because we could leave it at that and it's sort of quite delicate. It's got quite a nice sort of light feel to it, but I'm going to try adding a bit more definition with some penning. So I'm going to just, everything is not too wet, but I am just going to give it a quick 30 seconds blast with the hairdryer to make sure that it's that it is completely dry before I get some. So you might want to get some drawing pens. I'm just going to mute for a second while I do that, so I'm not sharing my hairdryer noise with you all. Okay, so part of the reason that I'm going to use a bit of pen is that I want to then put some more colour into the background, and making sure that everything is nice and defined with the pen will help stop it from disappearing or sort of getting too runny and splashy. So I'm just using make sure you've got a waterproof drawing pen. So I'm using like a 0.4 drawing pen, a sort of middle sort of thickness of one. And when I'm doing this, what I'm not going to do is I'm sort of trying to follow the paint that's here. I'm not trying to impose too much on the shape that's there. So I'm just sort of slightly outlining the shape that I've got so that I know that what I'm still following is the paint. So I'm not trying to alter what I've done. I'm just following what's there, but just giving it that definition. I know that sort of people often think about doing an outline before they paint, and you can totally do it that way round, but I like the sort of the free, this is another way of doing it, I like the freeness that the paint gives you. And sometimes, you know, just creating the shape from what the paint makes on the page and being slightly out of control at the beginning, I find that it then gives you something to start with, and you can then somehow it's much easier to make something look like you want when you're not having to construct it from the ground up. So I'm just following the paint marks that I've got just with my pen, just to pick out that sort of the detail of feathers, I'm just going around the paint mark. I don't even have to follow it 100% precisely because it kind of gives it a nice energy to be slightly different and slightly working around what we've got here. So we've got all these sort of edges here I can just bring in for the feathers, and sort of like that starts to make them look like they're quite roughly. You can see here I don't have paint here, but just by drawing them on top it doesn't look weird, it just looks like it's all part of the flamingo. So I can make his hat look a bit more defined just by going. The only thing I'm going to add is just going to continue that brim a little bit. It now looks slightly South American somehow. I'm thinking more sort of mariachi band, I think. A mariachi flamingo more than an Australian flamingo. If only I could draw. What am I don't know. I was going to say I don't know to sling a guitar on him, but I think we'll just carry on with that. So you've got the two legs here. Choose which leg is in front, because the one that in front needs to overlap. So if I decide that the sort of straight leg is in front, I can just come down and outline that like that, so that it's definitely in front. And then this one then comes behind. So just make sure that when you draw that one in, it doesn't cross the line of the one in front like that. And then you've got his sort of toes kind of curling round like that. But just making sure that that doesn't cross just allows that little bit of sort of reality where he's sort of coming around there. And then I'm going to add a little bit of a smile, because he's got quite a nice smile appearing in the paint, because it's just done a little curl up there, so I can add that sort of in there. And if I wanted to make the eye a bit, I could go round the eye dot that I've draw that sort of round again. I think that just sort of makes it quite bright, and I can put, we could put more detailing on as we go, but we'll come back, maybe do some more. We can get some texture into his legs and stuff. Let's go and look at the dolphin, because I've got all his sort of scuba gear on now. So I'm going to again outline round what I've drawn here, and I'm just going to add in a little sort of wobble of like a wobbly line across the surface like that, and that just sort of helps to make it look a bit like it's. By coming a bit closer, you can see it makes it look a bit more like it's glass. Again, I can draw around his eye again and make that a bit bitter and brighter. So, and I can give his nice smiley mouth. I can give it a little bit more of an upturn, and they usually have like almost like little sort of zip marks. I said before, it's a zippy beak, but I think we'll leave that. And I can draw in like a little nostril up there, and just draw his head in. Again, it doesn't have to be neat, it can just be sort of part of it. Just do the edge where his face is sort of sticking up. I know I've cheated. I could do a whole dolphin leaping out of the water, and I haven't done that because it's quite a lot of dolphin to draw, but that's him sort of in there. Let's have a look at the otter. So again, where you've got this nice sort of soft paint, you don't want to necessarily do a solid outline. Let me just bring the camera a bit, because he's a bit off he's a bit sort of, I hope you can see him all right, he's slightly at an angle, so it's a bit hard. I can't get him to move over without turning him upside down, and that might look a bit weird. So you don't want to necessarily do like a very hard outline round his edge. So I'm just going to make that nose into a definite sort of little triangle, sort of not ottery shape, and maybe do a little kind of almost like a sort of teddy bear mouth, because they have those sort of little mouths front on. Again, just put a extra ring round the eye, just adding a little bit of sort of that on, and a few little lines across the nose just to sort of look like that little wrinkle. But you don't have to, as I said, outline. You can do like a dotty outline, and I'm just using little pen marks to come round, little sort of like stipples almost, look, just to kind of give that appearance of furriness. So I'm not doing an outline, I'm just using my pen just to do little marks kind of coming round, and that kind of keeps it looking fluffy, so he's not terribly sleek and smooth like some of the other creatures. They have quite big whiskers, so you can definitely draw those whiskers in, which will make him look less like a teddy bear, which they do look quite teddy bearish. So if yours looks a bit like a teddy bear, don't worry, so do otters. Otters look like teddy bears. So, and then we can just give him little paws. They have quite definite hands, in which they use for, they've got quite lovely dexterous fingers for opening sea, shells and things like that. So let's again, and just continue that sort of fluffiness, so you're not having to do a hard outline on this one at all, because he's a fluffy creature. So anything you want to make fluffy, again, if you do your outlines like this, then it doesn't look so hard and fast. And then you can just bring some detail into his little paws at the bottom. And they always sort of stand with that slightly sort of toes together kind of look, which I think is partly why they're they evolved to be like possibly the cutest creatures on the planet. They put all the cute things together into one sort of cute package. Otters, really, because they've got the little tiny hands and the little toes. But then I'm going to do him holding his kite loop sort of thing, those sort of, and then just with the kite up here, if I move that back, I don't want to put like again a really strong black line across it. It's got a bit wonky, that's better, there we go. I'm just going to kind of hint, let the pen off the page and then down so that it's not a completely solid line, but just that little hint of a line, you get across that feeling that it's a very thin line, but it's going to the otter and he's flying it. But it doesn't, if you draw like a big thick black line, again it's going to look too heavy, but just let the line be slightly broken, because you just sort of see like little moments of it as it comes across, and that will indicate that he's flying the kite. And then we can always add the detail, again draw around the kite, and sometimes it's not, it works really nicely just to have the line slightly, you could slightly straighter or slightly offset from the actual paint drawing. It just makes it sort of quite fun and quirky, and you can always add in like a second line as if the tail's leaving a kind of visual outline like that, so it's sort of moving. You can even add a few little sort of whiz lines like that, so you can see that it's sort of straining against the wind. So let's come down and look at the duck and the elephant. That sounds like a good name. That's like a name for a hipster pub, isn't it? The duck and the elephant. I'm sure somewhere there's going to be a pub in Shoreditch called that. Right, so with the duck, I've left that white space for his eye, so I'm going to put a little pupil into it, leaving the back of the white space there, so it's now, and that really helps to bring that eye to life, doesn't it? It makes it quite sort of perky. And then his beak's going to come down here. He looks quite sad, actually, as if, nobody wants to make sandcastles with him, and he's a bit sad about it, actually. I think he's just standing next to the elephant, looking a bit sad because no one's building a sandcastle with him. We can come and just outline some of the detail of the spade and make that stand out. And again, think about where it's going into the bucket, because it's going to go down, it's going to go past the far wall of the bucket, and then the front of the bucket, the rim, is going to come round in front of it like that. It's just thinking about little perspective moments that sort of help it make sense. And we can draw a handle in like that, so it's definite sort of like pail for a bucket shape like that. And then we can outline round the sides like that. Oh dear, poor duck, he does look sad. Nobody wants to make a sandcastle with him. Oh, that was always me at the beach. Nobody wants to make sandcastles except me. I always do it. And then I just give that beak a little bit of edge to it, and then just come round with him, because they're quite sleek. You can just do a solid outline, kind of coming round, and you can just give a little sort of indication of fluffiness sort of round, because they tend to have slightly fluffier underneath feathers, but and then we can bring that over the top in the same sort of way. There we go, his little curly drake's tail. So come around there. If you want to, you can add a line in to indicate where his wing is sort of coming like that, where he's looking sort of quite sad. And then I'm going to do elephant. So the only thing I'm going to add on is the elephant is they often have, if you do the trunk with slight bumps like that going up, and then you give the end of his nose, which is sticking up in the end of his trunk, a slight sort of shape like that, and then you can just put little lines kind of coming through around the trunk, and that just indicates that there's sort of wrinkles happening, and bring again that round. So you're just working with the sort of paint that you've got, the lines that you've got, just to sort of drawing them up really with a pen and just adding some more details and coming around to head there. That's it. And it allows you to kind of build the picture, and then when you're happy with everything, you can kind of use the outline to establish and decide definitely what's there and what's sitting in front of what. So there's his little elephant hand sort of there coming out, and just those last sort of bits in, so that I don't know if he's pretending to be asleep so he doesn't have to build a sandcastle with that annoying duck, or whether it's whether he actually is asleep. I haven't decided yet. And again, you don't need to draw all the shadows in. You can just sort of like keep to the outline sort of round there. And again, just adding some detail. You can add some fringing onto the beach towel like that, just with a little bit of detail. And we can add some detailing onto the bucket and give it a little band and sort of stripes in like that. I'm just going to go around the sort of dark. So that's given us some sort of a... So now everyone's got something that they're doing on the beach and they're all sort of coming together. So I'm going to add in now some stronger colour in the sea, because the sea is looking a bit too grey. And I think if we want this to be like a sort of happy, summery scene. So I'm just going to come back with some stronger sort of turquoise and come in and come round everyone, just catch the drips before they get too carried away. But so you can come across the kite line and it's still kind of there, and just come round, and because of the outline you've got there, you can kind of get quite, you don't have to be too deadly accurate with it. You can sort of, oops, sorry, my brush is just attacking the camera stand there. Come in and bring that sort of sea colour through more. I want to get some more sea in behind. I don't want there to be a big slice there, so let's come in and I'm using quite a big brush. You can obviously use a smaller brush to kind of work your way around to kind of get all this sort of background in. So there you are, it's a bit more of a blue sea, but you've got a nice outline to work to now, so we can see where you want it to come along the sky there. And there we go, and I'm going to put like a nice dark horizon, hopefully. I need to get a bit more paint on that to make that work, but I just want to bring that across so you've got a bit more kind of sea there. And there we go, just sort of tidy that up a bit. That's it, get some colour in there, and if it's too stripy we can always come and just add a bit more water to soften that down again. There we go, so it's not really strong and hard, it's sort of still quite sort of soft. And again, we can do some more, we could put some more kind of colouring on the beach and that sort of thing. So I mean, that's sort of a very, very sort of quick, basic sort of, we can add layers. We can go back more into it, because now once you've got the outline, we can kind of work in with the outline again. So we're quite happy with that, is we can come in and add again some more shadow. And I think what this picture needs is some shadow, because we've seen before how the shadow makes it look like it's sunny. So I'm going to add some depth to some of these shadows, and I also want the animals to be casting a bit of shadow on their background. So we're going to get some shadow stronger kind of through here, and then like, let's think about the direction. So all the shadows have to be going the same direction. That's something you have to watch out for when you're doing something like this. You don't want to end up with one shadow going one way and one going the other. So if we decide that all the shadows are going to be pointing this way towards the otter, so that means that everything needs to have a shadow in the picture. So we're going to have to put a little bit of shadow under the duck there. Luckily we can say it's quite a sort of midday shadow, so it can be quite sort of high up in the sky. We need to get some shadow really on his feet a bit, but we can have a little bit of bucket shadow kind of coming round there. You just see like a little half round or little round of shadow, and you might have a tiny indication about the spade kind of sticking up there. So under the duck's feet, yeah, like that, and then otter. So his shadow is going to be on this side here, and just by putting those shadows in, I need to get that otter shadow a bit darker. That is hopefully starting to make that look like it's quite sunny, and we've got that in quite intense sort of light coming behind them all. And then a little bit of shadow even under that blanket. That's going to work quite well. You're not going to see a little bit of elephant shadow just sort of coming behind in there. You're really just going to see it off the top of his head, because the sun's quite high, so we're not having massively long shadows. You're not going to see any shadow under his feet because it's all kind of going that way. with the animals in the water, we're not going to see shadow as much, but we're definitely going to see maybe a little bit more sort of colour in the water. But I think we're still going to have, the shadow's obviously going to be in tones of blue. So we want to put some shadow underneath the flamingo, like that, just to sort of, and you can see how that sort of really helps to put it into sort of the reality of the waves that are moving there. And with dolphin as well, that needs to have a bit of, I mean, really it's only a dolphin head, isn't it? I've slightly cheated by doing a dolphin because unless I was going to draw him underwater, you're not going to see most of the dolphins. So, but that's why they're quite handy to do. And we could have done them all, if I'd been smart, we could have done them all swimming in the water, and then it'd all been half vanished, wouldn't they? They'd have been a lot quicker to do. But there we go. So that's sort of just put that sort of bit of shadow in there. And you would even have a bit of shadow under the kite. So somewhere, sort of dark brown shadow kind of just somewhere kind of under here in the sort of side. Now the sea doesn't look quite right because there should be kind of some waves and things breaking or some sort of movement of water kind of coming in. So let's bring a little bit of it in sort of around the edge here. Just some indication. Maybe the duck's trying to wake up the elephant and say, look, the tide's coming in. You need to move or you're going to get soaked. You're going to get your towel's going to get swept away. Or you're about to get a cold slap in the face from the waves. Just to sort of bring those sort of in there. And then, of course, you can always go back and we can always add, once you've got one level of detail, we can go back and we can add more. We can try, sometimes I like to experiment with using different thicknesses of pens to get different weights of line. And so I'm just grabbing a thicker pen if I can find one. Here we go. That's my sort of brush pen. So again, I can add a bit more sort of drama to bring in a darker, stronger line. Again, underneath maybe, just to kind of give some extra oomph. Like that. And then that just becomes a bit, again, extra sort of shadow. Think about like maybe under the dolphin's chin like that. So I suppose they have got a chin, haven't they? So under there. And then just adding some darker line in here. Because again, now we've worked out and we're happy with it, then we can go bolder with the lines because we're kind of confident now that we've got them where we want to be. So we can bring some of those just added details in. Kind of came around. The duck's definitely moved forward in the profile. He's slightly further forward now. It makes a bit more sense of him because he was doing a slight. So I think it's better that his beak's overlapping the elephant there. So he's definitely kind of in front of the elephant. So I'm just going to bring, and I can bring his feet into a bit more detail with that sort of pen. Again, I'm just thinking about, I'm adding the line, the heavier line on the more shadowed side of everything, and it helps to kind of give that shadowed feel and a bit more solidity. So like this side here where I've got a bit more shadow kind of underneath his sort of little ottery paws. Again, still using kind of light marks, not trying to do a solid outline on everything. And going to bring that sort of coming in here. And again, you can just keep on going and adding more sort of details in as you want to. And again, but I think we've got quite a nice sort of happy beach scene kind of happening here, and everyone's got a little role that they're playing. The otter looks a bit concerned. I don't know if he's worried about the duck. I think he's a compassionate otter, and he's worried that the duck's not happy because, you know, maybe he's going to go and put his kite to one side and suggest that they do go and build a sandcastle and cheer the duck up. And I think that's kind of like what you start seeing in pictures like this. You start seeing, even if it's something as simple and silly as this, you know, we're going to see the characters of all the different animals coming through, and we start to think about the relationships between them and what they're all about. And so we can start to sort of work out, you know, the elephant's clearly out for the count. Maybe he's had a bit too much to drink in his picnic, you know, and he's sort of sleeping it off and has promised the duck that he would play with him but hasn't. And their wife, you know, and that's where, you know, that's why the duck's looking sad. So there's a whole story happening now around this drawing because I don't know what the flamingo and the dolphin are up to yet, but we haven't worked them in yet, but we'll keep thinking about it. But there we go. So I can just add more depth with the sort of shadows and the lines and things. And there we go. And if I've got a white pen to hand, which sometimes I do have, you can then come and use this to add again some sort of highlights. So like on the things like the glasses, you can, on the watery glasses, you can add a little bit of white kind of highlight around, just to sort of, and then in the feathers as well. And particularly the water and the sort of reflection of the water, we can just add some moments of white kind of coming in that, and just some added highlight on the feathers and things, just to sort of bring that, and again highlight up on his nose. And if you haven't got a white pen, white paint and a fine brush will allow you to add some sort of details in, and just pick up on some highlights. And then I think what we could do is add a little bit of, I think the elephant's probably been out in the sun a bit too long, so I think we might just add a tiny hint of pink on his tummy, where he's clearly been out in the sun for a bit too long. And there we go, so we can have a bit of a pink glow, maybe just coming across his tummy like that, and on his trunk, sort of round there, just to add a final sunburn detail. And again, you can just soften that into the grey. And someone's going to need some calamine lotion when he wakes up, I think. So there we go, it's a little bit of pink, hint of pink there. It's quite hard to get them all in, isn't it, into focus, but there we go. So there is our, it still looks a bit grey. I think I need to get a little bit more turquoise into the sky, because it looks like quite a British seaside, where we're all sort of being very bracing about it and sort of braving the weather rather than enjoying it. But I think I need to get a bit more blue into the sky, but hopefully the shadows have shown a bit of sort of sunlight coming in there. And there we go, and that's our collection of creatures on the beach that we've managed to do from what everyone's suggested.